In 2011, a man was murdered in a ghost town. He'd spent decades bringing it back to life, restoring buildings, leading tours, preserving history. Then, someone shot him on the very property he'd dedicated his life to protecting. But here's the twisted part. This wasn't the town's first death, or even its second. This is Steins, New Mexico, a town that died 3 times. First, when the railroad stopped delivering water and every resident was forced onto trains, leaving everything behind. Second, when fire consumed what remained. And third, when violence claimed its protector. If you've never heard of a town dying multiple times, keep watching. And drop a comment. Have you ever visited a ghost town? I want to know. 1880. The Southern Pacific Railroad was punching through Steins Pass, connecting the transcontinental line across some of the harshest desert in America. They needed a service stop, a place to take on fuel, water, and make repairs. They called it Steins, after nearby Steins Peak. But here's something most people don't know. About 1,000 Chinese laborers lived near Steins Peak while blasting rock for the railroad bed. Backbreaking, dangerous work that's often erased from Western history. By the early 1900s, Steins had grown from a tiny siding into a real town, about 100 residents with a store, restaurant, and saloon serving railroad workers and travelers. Then, in 1905, opportunity arrived. The Southern Pacific built a massive rock-crushing plant and quarry to produce ballast for thousands of miles of track. Suddenly, Steins had jobs. The quarry employed dozens. Combined with the railroad and nearby mining camps in the Kimball district, the area boomed. By 1919, estimates suggest the town and surrounding camps supported up to 1,000 people, maybe as many as 1,300, including the wider district. But there was always one critical problem.
Steins had no local water source.
Not a river, not a spring, not even a reliable well. Every single drop had to be brought in by the railroad. Residents bought water by the barrel. It was far too precious for baths or gardens. You drank it, cooked with it, and that was all. Think about that for a second. Could you live somewhere with no running water, where every drop had to be hauled in? Let me know in the comments. Life in Steins was brutal. Summer temperatures exceeded 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust coated everything. The nearest real town was miles across desert. But people stayed because there were jobs. The railroad paid, the quarry paid, the mines paid. Then, in 1925, the rock quarry closed, just shut down. Dozens of jobs vanished overnight. Families began leaving, businesses struggled, but some held on, dependent on the railroad continuing to stop and deliver that precious water.
Through the 1930s and into the 1940s, Steins limped along, a shadow of its former self, but still alive. Then came the announcement that killed Steins forever. Around 1944, the Southern Pacific made a business decision. Steins was no longer profitable as a stop. They would close the station, discontinue service, and stop delivering water. Without water delivered by train, human life in Steins was unsustainable. You simply cannot live in the desert with no water source. The railroad made an offer: free transportation to anywhere on the Southern Pacific Line if residents would leave. But there was a catch. You could only take what you could carry onto the train. Most accepted. What choice did they have? Stay and die of thirst? They left furnished homes, dishes and cupboards, furniture and living rooms, clothes and closets, tools and sheds. Entire lives abandoned because you couldn't carry them on a train. The post office closed in 1944. By 1945, Steins was a ghost town, killed by thirst. For 20 years, Steins stood empty but preserved by desert air, a time capsule of 1944. Then, in 1964, fire swept through the ghost town.
Many historic structures burned. What had been a complete ghost town became ruins. Steins died a second time. But in 1988, something unexpected happened. A couple named Larry and Linda Link purchased the site. They cleaned up decades of debris, restored several buildings, collected artifacts, reopened Steins as a guided tour ghost town. For years, Larry Link was Steins' storyteller, leading tours, sharing history, keeping the town's memory alive. But vandals kept breaking in, stealing, destroying. It was constant. Then, in 2011, tragedy struck again. Larry Link was murdered on the property, shot and killed in the ghost town he'd spent decades protecting. The case remains unsolved. The Link family, devastated, fenced the property and stopped regular tours. Steins died a third time, not from thirst or fire, but from violence. Today, Steins sits just off Interstate 10, visible from the highway, but largely closed to the public, a cluster of ruins beneath Steins Peak. You can see remnants of the railroad era, buildings where families lived until water ran out and forced them onto trains, possessions they couldn't carry, still there after 80 years. Steins is a triple tragedy. A town killed by corporate abandonment when the railroad stopped delivering water, burned by fire 20 years later, and marked by a modern murder that closed it again. And here's something to think about. How many places exist only because someone else decided to deliver their water, their power, their supplies? What happens when that decision changes? Steins reminds us that towns don't just die from natural disasters. They die from corporate decisions, from violence, from being forgotten by the world rushing past on the highway. Thank you for watching. If this story of triple tragedy moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. We uncover abandoned places, forgotten histories, and the dark stories behind America's ghost towns. Drop a comment. What ghost town should we explore next? And check out the videos on screen for more stories of towns that vanished. Until next time, remember, some towns die once. Steins died 3 times.